Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healey with DevilsDigest.com.
All right, Joe. Spring ball is now past the halfway point. We're starting to hit the home stretch a little bit. Things are heating up. We'll be, of course, diving down into all the key developments there. Also talking to a couple of Sun Devils who are having great springs, but also this happens to coincide with everybody's favorite time of year. The portal window is about to open again.
Yep, no shortage of news tidbits locally and across the country, and the massive greed of college athletes coming to the forefront, and hopefully a former quarterback from Tennessee gets humbled significantly, and ASU has nothing to do with it. But yeah, that transfer portal, my goodness, does it emphasize just the nightmare that is college athletics right now?
The never changing landscape, of course, as we record this, the House settlement is still creeping along towards approval and the ramifications thereof. That it's going to be pretty interesting. So, yeah, we'll be diving into some of that. And, of course, reviewing some of the big things throughout spring. We'll also be talking to Raleek Brown and AJ Ia, as well as new son of a commit, Niniva Nicholson. Joe, quickly before we go full steam into football, a couple of news items on the basketball front. The women's basketball team got a commitment from McKenna Brackens from UNLV, averaged nearly 10 points and 6 boards per game. And whereas the men got a commitment from Bryce Ford from Toledo, a 6'3" guard, originally from Scottsdale, so homecoming of sorts. He averaged 7 points and 3 rebounds last season.
Yeah, no disrespect, but somebody's going to have to convince me why I should be excited about this acquisition for ASU and in Ford. Again, not trying to be disrespectful. He averaged 2.6 points a game as a freshman, 7.1 points per game for Toledo as a sophomore, a team that was only a couple games over 500. That's concerning to me, highly concerning. Is that a statement on the state of Sun Devil athletics? I don't know, or not necessarily Sun Devil athletics, but Sun Devil men's basketball. Again, concerning to me. They need to get much better players than this out of the portal. This is not someone that, to me, strikes any sort of enthusiasm in any capacity. I'm not sure if maybe he's related to like a big booster or something like that. That's just obviously a total guess, not anything that's said with anything to it. Yeah, if ASU is going to continue to get guys with a career average of 5.1 points per game from the college ranks as their transfers, we all know this upcoming season has the potential to be very, very, very challenging, and they need to do significantly better than this if they're going to do anything, if it's even going to be as challenging as people expect and not fall far short from that. There have been some decent pickups so far, but again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful toward a person, but in trying to turn this program around, you got to do significantly better than this.
Yeah, it's going to be Bobby Hurley's potential last stand. And we talked about, throughout the course of the season, the way things ended. He's getting one last lease at life. But, when you have a roster with just Trevor Best returning among the scholarship guys, it's going to be interesting to exactly see how this roster composition comes together over the next couple of weeks and months. All right. So before we dive into ASU football, something that's been a big talking point around the college football game nationally. And I think there is a potential tangent that leads to Sun Devil talk. The University or Colorado is decided to retire Travis Hunter's number 12 and Shedeur Sanders' number 2. This coming up this week, in fact, during their spring game. Now, not to say that these guys weren't very productive football players. Of course, Travis Hunter, a historic run to the Heisman Trophy, but what caught my eye is initially a lot of folks after what we saw what Cam Scatterby was able to do this past season, almost single-handedly rewriting the Sun Devil record books in so many different ways. They were calling for his number 4 to be retired. Typically, this is something that you see years after a player's career ends, but Travis. I mean, with the Colorado through that prism specifically, Travis Hunter, I get he's a Heisman winner, even though I believe their prior Rashawn Salam Heisman winner had to wait several years before getting that honor. Shedeur's retirement, that's a little weird, if expected. Go.
Yeah, I mean, it's pathetic. It's pathetic. It really is. This is yet another just disgusting effort by Deion Sanders for publicity and attention, and to keep his family name permanently attached to Colorado, even when he decides to take whatever pay upgrade he's going to take wherever he goes, which, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's after, the next year or so. Yeah, it's laughable. It's making them quite a bit of a laughing stock online, which I personally love to see. Also comes a day removed from Travis Hunter essentially saying he will never play football again if he isn't able to play both ways in the NFL. Like, I understand and I can appreciate someone who's a competitor like that, but to be such a clown and a baby about it by giving ultimatums, I'm not going to play football anymore if you don't let me play both ways. Pathetic. Like, the coddling that's going on with these people is just my goodness, you can't help but shake your head at it. Travis Hunter, as you mentioned, yes, he deserves to have his number retired eventually there because he won a Heisman Trophy. I think that's something that if you get that accolade, that is the elite of the elite, then by all means. But for Shedeur Sanders, my goodness, come on. He was the offensive player of the year in a conference where shortly thereafter, a lot of people were making very clear the point that he did not deserve that. He played 2 years at the school, didn't win a single bowl game. What did they have combined? About 13 wins over those 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. That
Yeah.
is such a laughing stock. And I can't imagine that this came from anyone else but Deion Sanders. And if I'm wrong, somebody please prove me wrong. It has to be him pulling his stroke around and making that happen. I can't imagine that that's orchestrated by any sort of other group associated with the university than him. I mean, the egos are completely out of control, but you know what? They capped off at what 9-4 in a bowl game loss to BYU. Outstanding. I know that Deion Sanders is all about himself and a me first approach, and anyone that's tied to him is going to try to adopt that as well. It'll be fizzling out before too long because those players aren't going to be replaced at Colorado anytime soon. They're very good college players, and in the case of Travis Hunter, a Heisman Trophy winner, so that puts him in a category that's different. I will not and cannot deny that. But to do this immediately, where in the world, what school do you see where a player's jersey is retired within months after he finishes playing there? I mean, seriously, and think about the elite of the elite players that we've watched in college football over the time that we've all watched that. See if you can think of or locate online where that's happened, where guys get their numbers retired immediately.
I saw
Doesn't
something
happen very often.
Yeah, I saw something today on this point where people are Tim Tebow still hasn't had his number retired at Florida despite 2 titles and a Heisman.
Yeah, and Tim Tebow could possibly be a top 5 or 10 all-time greatest college football player of all time. So the comparisons and the players who do not have that accolade, as you mentioned, Tim Tebow being a sterling example among them. So at this point, I just laugh because nothing surprises me. None of just the antics and the desperate attempts for relevance and publicity that come out of Colorado football from Deion Sanders. Nothing surprises me, and it sucks. It really does because Colorado's not a bad program. Like I feel like this is a thing that is just one person doing all of this madness to try to keep himself relevant in the news, and as a byproduct, keep that football program relevant. We'll see how they do this season. I know that the expectations are not going to be incredibly high, but though it shouldn't shock me when I saw that, I just couldn't help but laugh and chuckle to myself, and using this as a little bit of catharsis right now to talk it out because man, that's not the kind of college football that I personally care for, to just hand these things to people when others in other areas who have done much more either haven't received that same sort of honor or had to wait decades of time to do so.
Yeah, I figured you might have something to say on this topic, and of course ASU is heading up there to play on November 22nd. So perhaps we'll see the rafter, wherever they're going to put this retired number segments. And yeah, I have no problem with the Travis Hunter, but in the Shador thing was just very, very interesting. And it's, as you mentioned, Joe, it's, very clearly, stemming off of Dion. And you wonder if perhaps, Shador now is going to catch some unnecessary flack for, what his, the decisions that are perhaps being made above him. But we'll see. But, before, to tie this kind of, correctly, let's talk, real quick about, Scat. Do you think that, his time here in Tempe, also 2 years like Shador, but, far more successful, both from I would say from a personal and team perspective, he earns that honor, and obviously, wouldn't be like coming up at the fan fest in a week and a half. But, ultimately one day, do you think that number 4 should be retired?
I don't think so. Uh, you have a lot of guys. It's a long list of Sun Devils. I mean, it's just Woody Green, doesn't he wore number 22. That's not retired. and he had some incredible seasons. He's all ASU's all-time leading rusher. He was an All-American. He's not up there. And I'm not necessarily just saying that because of the position he plays, but even like they have numbers that are, I don't, maybe you know better than me, but that are honored but are not retired.
I mean, Trent Bourget was
Like
in the 16 for Jake. I mean, Chris Johnson, the redshirt freshman DB, still wearing
80,
the
84, I believe, is still in use from John Jefferson. I believe 62 from Randall McDaniel. I believe 52 from Ron Pritchard. I think that ASU only has, if I'm not mistaken, I'm running through my head, I think it's only 11, 27, 33, 40, and 42 for Danny White, Bobby Mulgado, Whizzer White, Mike Haynes, and of course Pat Tillman. I believe those are the only ones that are out of circulation. Though, and there again, you'll say no, but I've seen this number and this number in Mountain America Stadium. Those are what Brad and I just mentioned as far as ones that are honored, but not necessarily like Ring of Honor, however, whatever the description is. So if they continue to do that sort of honor thing, maybe, but yeah, it's just me knowing what I know about the history of Sun Devil football and how rare it is for a number to be retired. Now, will he be like a Hall of Famer for ASU? By all means, I would certainly expect that when at the earliest opportunity for him to be eligible. Now, obviously, if he would have led ASU to a national championship, that would have been a different thing. So, again, I feel like I always come from whatever the recency bias. I don't know the definition of everything right now, but I am the type of person where I will typically look more fondly on the days of yore and like, wow, this player is right up here and this player more recently is not at that level, even if they're kind of similar. Maybe it's just, thinking about where I was in life as a kid or a teenager when I was watching him play. So it always feels difficult for me to say that someone, of recent times, and N'Keal Harry, Brandon Ayuk, Benjamin, whatever the case may be, as someone who's going to be up there among the, Mount Rushmore-esque players of the program's history. It's just tough company to join. So I'd be kind of surprised. I know that there are a lot of folks that would maybe disagree, but just given the history and who is and who's not listed in there now and what they've done for Arizona State, I would be surprised, quite frankly.
I agree. Yeah, he obviously was one of the most impactful Sun Devils in recent memory. But yeah, I think it'll be a tough sell for the retirement there. But yeah, in terms of just the ASU Hall of Fame, maybe he does. Maybe get the nod. College Hall of Fame, and something similar that his name gets up there, but the number remains in circulation. But just kind of an interesting take there, especially kind of given the obviously very well, richly deserved wave of praise that Sun Devil fans were giving Scat for being such a historic part of the program turnaround. All right, Joe, let's talk about the portal, which as of this recording has not yet opened, but by the time it's released and you all are hearing it, it will be open. Two Sun Devils have officially made their intentions public that they will be jumping in the portal. Now, both of these guys have been around the program for just a little bit, but neither of them are in the two deep at this point. The first one to announce was defensive tackle J.P. Dieter, who of course came over a couple years ago from Purdue. Very good spring so far, I thought. Getting had some moments, but really when you look at the defensive tackle depth that this team has, C.J. Fight, Jacob Kangaika, Zach Swanson, Michael Gardner coming over as a transfer. Blazing Lona Wong has been very steadily improving throughout the course of his career. Even Justin Watley can play some inside as well. The path to meaningful playing time was pretty difficult for Dieter.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he would have a difficult time getting anywhere higher than the 3 deep, or maybe even struggling in that realm. So it's just a depth move. I mean, that's searching for playing time. It seems pretty simple.
And also following that earlier today, quarterback Navi Bruzan is entering the portal. He, of course, is walked on last season to the Sun Devil program. He's a local kid, led Liberty to a state championship, earned scout team MVP honors. And, obviously one of those guys kind of similar to Trenton Bourget in terms of just a high school quarterback here locally that led his team to great success, put up all kinds of numbers, but just didn't have necessarily the physical traits that big time schools would put forth a huge offer list. Extremely high football IQ. Most recently had earned third team reps in spring practices, replacing Michael Butter Tollefson. But now ASU is, you can't blame a kid for wanting to try to find a starting job somewhere else. So a hit to ASU's quarterback depth.
Yeah, and that's one that, you know, I'm not going to say it's surprising. It's kind of somewhere in the middle because he's a local guy and walk on, as you mentioned, so that might lend itself a little bit more to a player sticking around. Again, similar to Trenton Bourguet, since he was an Arizona guy and a walk on when he began at ASU. But the path for him to get any sort of playing time at all, includes a lot of twists and turns and people getting hurt and that sort of thing. And with, Sam Levitt being just a redshirt sophomore, though, a player of his caliber, it's entirely feasible that he may even leave for the draft after this year. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. But again, he wouldn't be any higher than third string unless there were injuries, and the path to legitimate playing time would really be a case of him betting on himself. So, to go elsewhere and see what that materializes for a player of that nature, you might be thinking of an FCS school or something like that, but maybe not. We don't know really what he can do at the college level just because, didn't get the time here. So we will see. But similar to Dieter, this is not a move of, a starter that's departing that ASU has to account for.
A little bit later on in the show, we'll talk a little bit more about the portal, what ASU would like to perhaps address or something along those lines. But this is not going to be like the last couple of years where some of these windows have resulted in waves of incoming and outgoing players. This is obviously a very experienced veteran team that did pretty well in the winter window, and so now it's just a matter of some fine tuning here and there. Before we dive into a spring ball review and get you caught up on what happened through 3 weeks of spring practices, ASU was able to land a couple more high school commits in the 2026 class. With those 2 new commits, their class is now at 10 verbal commits, which is good enough for 19th nationally per the Rivals team rankings. Starting off with a 3-star edge, Julian Hugo. Joe, this is like prototypical size you want from that edge position in modern day football. 6'4", 250-pounder, had a lot of the Big 12 offers as well as USC, UCLA coming after him, and perhaps unsurprisingly continuing the Texas to Tempe pipeline.
Yeah, ASU is going to have desperate need for edge rushers next year. You're going to get completely obliterated from pretty much your entire 2 deep. Now I know they've got some young players that they like, and of course the portal's a thing, but you still have to keep trying to replenish that depth because that coverage is going to get bare very soon.
Yeah, of course, guys with like Clayton Smith, Prince Torba, Elijah O'Neal that are seeing a lot of run, Justin Watley as well. But there are some young guys that and one in particular that had a really strong week of spring that could factor in as well. The other commit ASU landed is some more beef for the trenches. A 3-star offensive lineman, Niniva Nicholson, coming over from Rancho Santa Margarita, California. Offers from Cal, Oregon, Stanford, San Diego State, amongst others. 6'3", 285 pounds, and kind of like also he's part of the Poly pipeline, continuing the that Coach Saga Tuatele is bringing to the offensive line room.
Doing some research as we speak right now to see if my memory is. Well, I was way wrong. I don't know why in the world I was thinking that was the high school that Evan Finkenberg went to, but he did not. So what in the world associated that school and him in my mind? There's a throwback. That's the guy. That's one of those names that be good to have around every year. But yeah, that's good offensive line pickup. Seems a little bit under the radar based on some of the recruiting rankings, but it's a big body to get, and that's a valuable thing. You need to get as much depth as you can. I mean, if ASU can find some way to develop its offensive line by and large from the high school ranks, that would be a very, very good thing. That's a position group where, I mean, you want this everywhere, but you would really love to have guys that have 3-4 years that they play here versus 1 or 2. You can't be too terribly picky. You're always going to use the portal, but the offensive line, you'd love to have continuity as much as any position group. So they've done a very solid job in the 2025 class and what's developing so far in 26 if they can keep everybody on board. So hopefully that'll be the case. Again, I'm not expecting necessarily all 5 starters to be all high school guys 3-4 years from now, but if you can at least have 3 to 4 of them be that way, that would be an excellent thing.
Another very talented lump of clay for Coach Tuatele to develop in the coming years, and recently had a chance to get to know Niniva. So here's my conversation with Niniva Nicholson. All right, let's start off with the big question: why Arizona State?
I mean, Arizona State. I mean, what's there not to like about? I mean, Coach Dillingham, just everybody on the coaching staff, all the players. I mean, it's one of the best cultures out in college football.
Speaking of that culture, what are some of the things, when you took your official visit and were able to kind of see things up close, meet these people face to face? What really kind of jumped out to you about the culture and ultimately kind of, as you mentioned, sealed the deal?
I mean, throughout my whole OV, I mean, everybody was transparent. I mean, that's speaks a lot. I mean, and all the players, everybody was on the same page, and just the big poly pipeline. I mean, coming from a family orientated and poly background, I mean, just being with the players, with the coaches, I mean, they're all one. I mean, that's why they had such a great season last year.
And during your time there, you were able to kind of take in a Saturday scrimmage, seeing a lot of your future teammates in action. What were some of your takeaways from that scrimmage?
I mean, it just shows that. I mean, it's the next level. I mean, I was just trying to visualize myself just being on that stage and just getting ready for my season, and then just seeing where I could fit in.
So, of course, Kenny Dillingham is still one of the youngest head coaches in the country and full of the youthful energy, but also, as he likes to say, work harder than anybody in the country while also having the most fun.
Yes,
What is it
sir.
like when you getting to know Kenny throughout this recruitment process? What jumps out to you about, being a young players coach, but also somebody who still holds his players accountable?
I mean, just from the jump, I mean, I felt like he really connects with all his players. I mean, relationships. I mean, that's a great thing about football with all the relationships and brotherhood. I mean, just the little details with him. I mean, during my OV, he did some like magic with all of us, and it's really dope. Like how he just loves the game, how he loves his players, and he gives all of it intentful.
So when you mean magic, was he doing like magic tricks out there on the visit?
Yeah, it blew my mind. I didn't know he had that like that.
Well, this is actually kind of so. What kind of tricks did he pull off? What did he do?
I mean, with me, I mean, I picked a card from the deck. I mean, I got my card, put it at the bottom, and then he flipped over one of the cards. It wasn't mine, and I placed my hand over the card, and he said make this. My card was eight of diamonds. I told him. He said make this card an eight of diamonds, and then I flipped over the card, and it changed it to eight of diamonds. It was mind blowing.
Cool, cool, awesome. I'll talk to him about that. And of course, your future position coach and Sanga Tuatele. You mentioned the culture, the poly pipeline there. Also, his resume just shows that he has been able to develop effective offensive linemen. All throughout his career. What really excites you the most about working with Coach T?
I mean, the thing that excites me the most is that I know that I have a coach that will push me to the best I can be. I mean, he's gonna get on you, but it's tough love. I mean, that's kind of how it is with my parents and kind of the culture I'm from. I mean, they just want the best for you. I mean, you have to understand that it goes both ways. You have to give all your 100 too. So I mean, just Coach Tuatele, I mean, I know that he could develop me and make me the best version of myself.
And as you touched on earlier, you're just the latest in the poly pipeline, and what does it mean to you to just kind of be part of such a larger and important movement within the Son of a Football program?
I mean, it's great. I mean, just seeing all Polynesian players just, I mean, compete. I mean, it's family. I mean, it takes a village, and they have that village over there, and just having people that have the kind of grew up the same as me, kind of have the same culture as me. I really connect with them. It's a different connection.
For any Sun Devil fans that might not have seen you in action or caught your film, give our viewers and listeners a self scouting report. What kind of skill sets are you bringing to the trenches?
I mean, I believe that I'm a very explosive player. I mean, I got some people you can explain that as like a rubber band. I mean, I'll say I'm very explosive. I mean, I just I got a different kind of play style than everybody else. I mean, and it's gonna be great when I get over there at ASU, but there's still a lot of work ahead.
So you're a very versatile player as well. Where have they shared where they see you positionally? Along the line once you get here.
I mean, with my explosiveness and things like that, they see me as center, so anywhere interior.
What is your favorite part about, being an offensive lineman and being, life in the trenches and, ultimately kind of, being in a position where you can impose your will on a defense?
I mean, it is offense line is great. I mean, you don't get all the flash and glamour, but everybody knows deep down that you're a dog. I mean, you could explain it as like we're kind of the janitors. I mean, we kind of do a lot of the dirty work, but we make everything look clean.
So of course, along with the poly pipeline, there's also another Texas to Tempe movement as well. But also, you're a part of the Cali Devils movement as well. So, um, you know, I know the Texas guys like to say, talk their stuff about, what coming up through Texas is like. What is a guy, playing his ball in California? What sets the California guys apart?
I mean, California guys. I mean, I believe. All the best ball, all the best sports come from Cali. I mean, everybody tries to get Cali boys. I mean, Texas, the only thing they got is football, but Cali, we're versatile.
When you look ahead to your final high school season, what are some of the goals and things that you've set for yourself that you want to accomplish?
I mean, my goal is just to be a better version of myself. Just, just dominate really. And a team goals is to win a championship, but it's game by game, day by day. But we gotta stack our days.
So when you maybe daydream, a year and a half ahead from this point forward, and it's game day in Tempe, and you're running out in the maroon and gold through Tillman Tunnel past the Pat Tillman statue. What are some of the things that really kind of excite you most about your future as a Sun Devil?
Just being around all that Sun Devil fan base. It's great. I'm just ready to activate the Valley and just give them my all for all the Sun Devil fans, and I'm just ready.
All right, Joe, let's run down what happened through the third week of ASU spring practices as we're now past the halfway point leading up to the Fan Fest on Friday, April 25th at Mountain America Stadium. Now, this is as spring has progressed, we've seen kind of more of the established guys in the more veteran guys on this roster, the guys in the one and even two deep, really kind of have their workload just kind of throttled back a little bit with some more opportunities for the younger guys. Now, throughout spring, Kenny Dillingham has made repeated claims to want more out of those younger players. Now, some, as we talked about, have been making some pretty good statements to this coaching staff, but as Kenny said, there's not enough at this point. He wants more guys to just not just simply be happy to be there, but to really make a statement saying, "I belong." There's also, of course, been some mixing and matching as well. Let's do a kind of a position by position rundown as we've been doing the last couple weeks. At quarterback, status quo as one would expect. Sam Levitt is, I think, if anything in most notable development. I think he's getting more comfortable with the new pieces, especially the trio of transfer wide receivers. Each of those guys seems to be developing a better chemistry and rapport. Jeff Sims has had a pretty solid first 2 weeks. Didn't have the best last week, but I think if we're talking about just in terms of the biggest development, we touched on it earlier. Navi Bruzan, who had passed up Michael Tollefson as the number 3 guy, is now going to be in the portal. So it's time for Butter to step it up.
Well, one development with heavy quotation marks around it, I don't think that we addressed it in the portal discussion, and I don't know if that's forthcoming, if I should not do that as it pertains to this position group and what is being discussed online through some orange colored fans of college football. Is that a conversation for now, or should we save that for
I in the notes I did have it in kind of the portal area, but we can jump it up or hold it for later.
Yeah, so basically what I'm talking about is that, with the chaos that's going on at Tennessee and the NIL situation and just that really disgusting situation and trend that hopefully it does not set, of a player holding out for a higher NIL package and refusing to play in spring drills, and ultimately the school, those two parties parting ways with one another. Now then, there's been talk on social media by fans, really want to emphasize that, by fans of Tennessee football, that they really think that they're going to get Sam Levitt to transfer to Tennessee. again, at this point, it is just social media fodder to make you shake your head, and some folks from ASU have chosen to get involved. But at least that discussion's there somewhere. And when, anytime those conversations start, it's easy for folks to get anxious because, a whole thing about that, chaos with Tennessee is it's been very transparent what they've been paying their starting quarterback, I believe in the $2 million range, which is pretty lofty. I don't believe that there are a lot of other schools that are paying a quarterback that much money. So that puts that out there that's like, hey, this is what we can pay. Now then, of course, nothing being reported by anybody of any measure of, esteem or reputation on this matter, and just leaving it to social media talk. But again, when the discussion comes up, it can't help but get folks a little bit concerned, especially from some of the star players over the last 3 or 4 years that have left Arizona State.
In this day and age, I wouldn't close the door on anything, but this would be pretty close to close. I mean, this is a guy obviously loves it here. The rapport and the development he's had when working for Kenny Dillingham and Marcus Arroyo has been evident. That this is pretty clear. The big payday is but improving having the best season possible in the system that you have, developing your draft stock, and then he's going to be draft eligible following this season. And I mean, Doug Tammer and I have joked with Sam at practice, like, hey, like we would love you in Pittsburgh, because this guy has first round potential. That's where it's at right there. Not to mention all the this is last year he's forwent some of the his own NIL earnings to give back to the collective to share with his teammates. So it's not that doesn't necessarily scream I'm out for the biggest possible payday. That's just really not in Sam's DNA. And this is it's SEC fodder. And I was out on Monday covering practice, and I think I tweeted out a couple videos of Sam, and sure enough, made it the way into SEC Twitter. The narrative's there. I believe that they're, according to some Tennessee fans, they're also going to sign Avery Johnson away from K-State. So it's just kind of the nature of the beast. But yeah, the situation there was unfortunate. It seems like Nico Iamaleava getting some bad counsel, maybe overplayed his hand, or his father rather seems to be in the driving seat there. Who knows where he will end up? But of course, that's going to have some quarterback dominoes. But I don't think any of those dominoes are falling in Tempe.
Yeah, that's going to be something to watch with him from Tennessee because his leverage is gone. And he left because he wanted to get $4 million, and he was making about $2 million. My goodness. And the guy is, was a big time recruit, a solid quarterback, and they were a playoff team. But I mean, this is not Peyton Manning we're talking about over there. So that's going to be interesting to see how that happens. I'm curious. Obviously, this commentary is totally irrelevant to ASU, but it's going to be interesting to see how desperate teams get, because there are a lot of coaches. I know, the whole thing that we're saying about like Oregon's involvement in this, which I can respect. I'm sure that there are a lot of coaches that are not going to want whether it's a player or that player's entourage, they're not going to want that in their program.
Tulane pulled out today.
What's that?
Tulane pulled out of the race today.
There you go.
On that note,
I know people are talking about UCLA. Now, obviously, if there's a coach that's in that hot seat and is fighting for his life this year, that could be where you get it, or a program that's trying to get in the good graces. But yeah, teams are falling like dominoes. Obviously, North Carolina fell out. I don't know if UCLA is still in it. There are a lot that are just reportedly not under consideration. So this is going to be a really interesting case study for college football and this sort of action of being a highly paid quarterback at a prestigious program and deciding that that's not enough and holding out and trying to make yourself bigger than the program. That's obviously not going to go over well with the program at hand, and that has a ripple effect across things. So going to be very eager to see where he lands and what those financials look like, because everybody reporting is going to be all over that. It's just hard to believe that he's going to land at a program anywhere near the caliber of Tennessee for anywhere near the caliber of money. I think this is going to be an instance where he bet on himself, or he and his camp bet on him and themselves, and are going to lose out horribly.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate to see how that unfolded, and I'm all for players maximizing their value of, they always say, your value is whatever somebody's willing to pay you, and maybe I'm sure he's going to land somewhere and get a chance to compete, and I think Tennessee probably for that, maybe if that same amount of money or maybe even less, is probably going to get equal or perhaps even better quarterback play because that's a good team, and he did not have, he's kind of mid-tier in terms of the SEC quarterback performance last season. It wasn't great in the postseason. So, not to pile on a kid, but it's going to be interesting to see. And obviously, something like this was bound to happen in this kind of unregulated, just landscape of college sports and where things are. And we'll see exactly if there's things in the future in terms of the house settlement that perhaps put some guardrails or some more structure to things. But yeah, it's just unfortunate for the kid. But yeah, I mean it's a hard and costly lesson for him and his family to learn.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, and we're seeing a similar thing in all likelihood with Jaden Rashada. I mean, my God, I mean, we were the first ones to talk to him, and how the mighty might fall. It's unfortunate. These are situations where it's very largely either players' fathers or just their entourage that are giving them terrible advice. I'm certain because they just want to cash those checks themselves. Uh, Man, it's a tough thing, and you feel for the kids involved because it's typically, typically not going to be them. They're just going to be parrots for the adults in the room who are giving them terrible advice, and in all likelihood, profiting off those student athletes. So this is the dark side of NIL potentially. Granted, the guy got paid for a year or two that he was at Tennessee, and if he was responsible with that, then that can last for quite a while even if he has to take a step down and be humbled a little bit. But again, this is the dark side.
All right, so let's continue the rundown of ASU's spring performance at running back. I still think it's right now. You got two guys who have been really excelling at the top of that depth chart. Kyson Brown continues to be the guy getting probably most of the first team looks. Now, there's been a lot of rotation, and one of those guys who's making the most of that rotation, Raleek Brown. He had a huge week, really running with great power, and of course, he's always has that explosiveness, that speed ability. But really impressed by what we've seen from him. On Monday, Kyson Brown had a couple of huge runs, including like a 75 yarder. He's a big physical back, but he's also got some wheels as well. I think Kanye Udo's still, working his way, feeling more comfortable. He continues to see most of his time with the second team, mixing a little bit with the ones as well. I think one guy that really has made the most of his opportunities, Demarius Man Robinson, really running with some flash, some physicality, and really impressive to me is like what he's been able to do, in terms of pass pro and picking up blitzes. That's a really great way to ingratiate yourself with the coaching staff.
And he's not a huge dude. So yeah, if you do that, that's how you can earn playing time and leapfrog some guys and get in the lineup sooner rather than later, even if it's in just situational stuff. If you're going out there, you're putting your body on the line, you're protecting your teammates, especially as a freshman, especially at that position where that is pretty noticeable when you got guys who can pick up blitzes, who can block, versus those who are liability in that area. That's going to get you on the field.
All right, so moving on to wide receiver, I think the big headline here through week 3 is that now the transfers are really starting to get more comfortable. And of course, that trio, Jalen Moss working out of the slot, Noble Johnson, and then Jaron Hamilton on this past Saturday in the scrimmage. Hamilton had 2 touchdown passes, and I think really the rapport and chemistry, as mentioned earlier, with Sam Levitt is really starting to grow. Malik McClain still is running with the first team offense as well. Now we did see Jordan Tyson do some drills on Monday. First time he's done that since suffering that minor injury in the first week of camp. But again, we're not concerned about him. He's in no danger there. But I think right there you're starting to see some some things with Derek Eusebio continuing to be his steady self. But I think the big headline, Joe, is just those 3 transfers. Maybe some ups and downs in that first week or 2, but I think in week 3, all 3 of them have been able to put forth some really strong showings.
Yeah, and that needs to happen. It can't just be only Jordan Tyson out there. We saw Stovall and Guillory come on great, especially over the course of the latter stretch of the season last year as not only complementary receivers, but guys that could step up and essentially be a primary target. So that needs to be replaced because if it's just JT out there and the others aren't able to pick up the slack, then that just makes it way too easy for opposing defenses.
On to tight end when Shaman Mater has been one of those guys I think has not been putting out that being have thrown out there a ton. I mean, this is a starter. You know what you have on all Pac-12 or Big 12 caliber tight end, and that's opened the door for Kamari Anderson to continue to shine. Cameron Harple's made some nice catches and showing that he's more than just a guy who can contribute as a blocker. But I think the headline here, AJ Ia continues to show. I mean, I would be floored if he is not a significant contributor to this offense. Obviously, at 6'6", 245, 250, he has that physical presence, but he also is a guy that off the field is putting in the work, and he's making those tough physical catches over the middle as well. So I think ASU, and we talked about last week that Kamari Anderson has been really strong in spring as well. So I think ASU's got a really, really strong trio of tight ends heading into this year.
Yeah, as long as he stays healthy, I mean, there's just no way he's not. The progression of these newcomers, as we'll talk about later on, could very well also result in squeezing out some other players. But that's the competition that happens in the spring when you only have so many depth chart positions to go around.
All right, so now heading to the offensive line. Still a lot of mixing and matching, and some of the more veteran guys have been not having to be pressed out there a lot. So we've seen some stuff at tackle. Specifically, I think Jalen Clem is starting to really find his footing after a year away due to a medical issue. In particular on Monday, he had a couple of very impressive reps as well. One guy that I'll shout out as well, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. Makai Stewart, the true freshman guard, massive body. It seems like he could be in contention for finding some playing time this year.
Yeah, it's good to get some of these guys reps. You're still moving some pieces around. You got to get continuity going. But if the youngsters can contribute, that's a good thing.
All right, so flipping over to the defensive line, they're still really kind of dominating on a daily basis. The pass rush collectively is still strong. They're making a lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage. In the daily kind of one-on-one pass rush drills where the D line goes against the O line, they're still having the upper hand there. Now, of course, it's a very veteran-laden group. All those guys are been pretty solid, having great showings. Clayton Smith looks like he's leveling up, but one guy I want to single out is Roman Petrie, the Purdue transfer. In his second year, he's now looking like he is going to be a guy, maybe if not this year, but pretty soon. Because whether it's making aggressive plays against the run, or making some plays as a pass rusher, it's impressive. And it just collectively, this is such a deep group.
Yeah, the edge rush got to get better. Got to get better than last year. Collectively, probably the most disappointing group last season, if you ask me, on the entire team. In terms of expectations and what did or did not happen. And I include like place kicking because there weren't high expectations there. You got to get a better pass rush. We talk about it all the time. That needs to happen there. It's inexcusable that it was as bad as it was last year. That needs to improve. So hopefully there are some signs of showing that improvement this spring.
At linebacker, kind of status quo. It just you're starting to see that the year two effect of the guys like Jordan Crook, Keyshawn Elliott as your starters, Cyrus Fiaseu, those, and even Martell Hughes, the youngster who's trying to crack that rotation as well. That's generally the top four as of right now. They're playing quicker, they're playing faster. I think they're obviously leveling up physically, but mostly because they just understand things better. And we're seeing some great linebacker play as a result.
Yeah, you got a lot of bodies there, a lot of competition.
All right, moving on to safety. Your starters continuing to do what they do. Xavier Alford has got a hand injury. That's not kept him out. Even though he's got heavily wrapped, he's out there contributing, still doing his thing. Ghost Rouser still absolutely leveling dudes. Had a huge hit on Demarius Robinson on Monday. Chris Johnson and Jack Ball have been also, I think, pretty solid in terms of getting some reserve reps at those safety spots. But again, I think the thing here is the nickel battle, and Montana Warren still running with the ones. But I think Kendrick Breedlove had a very strong week, making some plays again, both in coverage and against the run. So that's going to be a real fun battle to continue to watch.
Yeah, I think fall camp will bring a lot. You got to get some guys healthy, that aren't out there right now. Get guys more acclimated. The spring ball, when you got a lot of newcomers, even if it's someone who's like a fifth or sixth year senior, they're still new to the program. So it can take a while to get acclimated. So even though somebody's a second or third string at this point, doesn't necessarily mean that they can't compete for a starting position when the fall comes around. They can acclimate a little bit more to the program.
All right, so closing things out, looking at the cornerback position, of course, Keith Abney been raving about his spring performance so far. Some other guys taking advantage of some additional reps. Some youngsters, I think, Plas Johnson, Rodney Bimmage. We'll talk about them here in a little bit more in a moment. But a true freshman, Joseph Smith, I think is really looking good and more comfortable. Don't think he's necessarily in line to maybe crack, the top rotation. Nyland Green is now back out and practicing a little bit, so that was a good sign to see. But the young depth in that room for Brian Carrington is impressive. So he's got a good luxury behind his pair of very well established starters.
Yeah, and it's great to see these guys are sticking around. We with the transfer portal opening up, you hope that everybody continues to stick around. You just have a logjam of a lot of young, talented defensive backs, but there are some that are in line for significant playing time. So hopefully they stick around and compete for that.
All right, so and then special teams. Jesus Gomez, Joe, he's got a strong leg. Nailed one the other day from about 57. Continuing to be pretty good. Had a miss earlier in the week, but generally speaking, it looks, not to jinx anything, but it looks like, I don't think there's any doubt in either of our minds that he was going to be, the first choice kicker out there. But it looks like he's rewarding his coach's faith so far.
Yeah, and he's someone that again, he's played enough and accomplished enough that he can. It's good to hear that he's doing some things in practice. He could have terrible practices, and I, wouldn't necessarily be concerned until the lights go on and things go live to see what he can do, because he's proven it there. Again, you want him to have good practices, and it seems like he's showing some things, but he's not someone to me that needs to prove as much as others.
All right, so before we close things out with a look at some of the standouts in portal shopping, here are a couple of post-practice conversations. First up, you'll hear from running back Raleek Brown, and then tight end AJ Ia.
Heading into second year as a Devil, how much more comfortable are you feeling in this offense right now?
I feel way more comfortable just being in the offense for a full year, just learning from Scat and all them last year, so I'm real comfortable with the offense.
How kind of disappointing was it to have the season kind of derailed by the injuries?
Real disappointing, but that's how life works, so just got to keep pushing, staying patient, and just keep the main thing.
Even though you weren't able to get out there and contribute on the field, how did you feel like maybe you improved, throughout the year, maybe the mental reps and just kind of, doing what you could?
I just improve on mental reps, just seeing everything, analyzing everything, seeing defense and seeing the offense. So I think I developed it real good.
Watching a guy like Scat do his thing and putting up those historic numbers, what were some things you were able to kind of take away from watching him and maybe incorporate into your own game?
Just running hard and staying focused and just keep grinding every day. He was a hard worker, so.
Looking at some of the other backs in this room, such as like Kyson, Kanye, and some of even the younger guys, how can all of your skills come together and form a good running group together?
Oh yeah, it'll come together real fine, like real good. So every running back a little different, but like me and Man kind of the same. Kanye and Sip and Otto and JB kind of like more power back. But like every running back got a little juice to them in a different type of way. So we contribute to the team a lot.
So when you look ahead to the rest of spring, how do you feel that this offense as a whole is coming together now that there's obviously so many returning faces?
It's coming together real well. I feel like we got a little connection. We still got a lot of work more to do, but like everybody focusing and getting everything together. So,
how do you feel you performed through the first 7 sessions of spring ball?
I feel like I performed pretty well. Still got a lot more to do, a lot of learning, and so. But I feel like I've been doing good.
What kind of potential do you have in this scheme of Marcus Arroyo and Kenny?
Big potential. So like, I feel like I'm gonna play a big role in this offense. I should, and I feel like I can help a lot. So, can't wait.
With so many different backs in there, are you a guy that needs to have a rhythm going into the game, or with so many guys, can you thrive in kind of a rotational by committee approach?
For me, I could rotate, but everybody want a rhythm in the game. So, but like I could rotate for sure, but if I get a rhythm, it's over. Yeah.
What kind of goals have you set for yourself for this upcoming season?
Like I said, just staying healthy, being on the field. Over 1,000 yard rushing, with over 500 receiving. So, and just help the offense.
See yourself playing a role in special teams with some of the return opportunities?
Oh yeah, but I should be kick, return, punt. I'm back there, so just got to keep working on it.
Kyson's mentioned at times how competitive this running back room is. How have you kind of each seen each player grow as a result of being so competitive?
We grew a lot. Like everybody want to be the number one. Everybody want to be the best. So that's just how it is. So everybody's just getting better every day.
So there's talk that you're the funniest guy on the team. Is that a well-earned crown, or is there somebody else that can match you?
Yeah, I'm like the funniest guy on the team. I'm not even trying to try. That's just how I am. So it's just, if you get around me and get comfortable with me, you'll know. But like, yeah, I am, no, for sure.
So 3 weeks of camp in the books now. What's been kind of like the biggest on-field adjustments making that jump up to major college football?
I feel like there wasn't really much of a jump just because in the Trinity League, like every week I would always play someone that's going D1, like pretty much basically the whole team. But even our preseason schedule in high school, it really benefited me as well. But I feel like also it's really just adapting to like my body and how I can really develop myself as a blocker. I can pretty much balance my game out.
Kenny praised you a couple weeks ago, just talking about your kind of off-field approach. Obviously, you're very physically talented, but like the off-field approach. Yeah. And has that something that's always been a part of your makeup, or is that something that's kind of you've developed over time?
Yeah, I feel like I'm never comfortable with not knowing what I'm supposed to do, and being able to I always want to know what I'm doing. I always want to be able to help out the person next to me too. So I feel like just being able to know what I'm doing and pretty much just know what I'm doing and know what everybody else is doing and how I can help them out, how I can become open and all that too. So.
How's the comfort level of the offense coming along?
I feel definitely more comfortable now. Like just over time when we started walkthroughs, I feel like I was lost at first, but then as I put more time off the field and on the field, I feel like it helps me a lot, and I'm really adapting to this offense.
That a big catch in the 11-on-11 looked like you caught a ball in traffic. About 3 guys converge on you, held onto the ball. Just what is it like? Just going over to the middle and having that mentality of knowing making those tough catches, knowing you're going to take a hit.
I feel like I could become the guy. Like I always want to be the guy that people can rely on. Like they can just throw it up to me and I'll get it. Or I can have sure hands on third down. Pretty much, I always want to be that reliable guy at all times.
Working with this group of tight ends, with veterans like Shimon Mate or even some younger guys in that mix as well. What are some of the things that are coming along in terms of the chemistry and rapport amongst that tight ends?
I feel like everybody helps each other out. Everybody loves each other. There's no tension in that. There's no bad tensions in that room. I feel like everybody wants to help each other out and be able. Everybody wants to see each other become great. I feel like learning from Cam and Shimon, they always help me out. Like I always study their game and being able to watch their steps and how I can adapt that to my game and how I can become that guy.
How do you feel you're a better player now than 3 weeks ago before spring started?
I feel like I've developed a little bit more, just more as a blocker. But I got to break all the bad habits that I had from high school, so I'm still getting there.
How impactful has Jason Mons been in your journey?
He's been very impactful. Like from when he first offered me to now, I feel like he's growing more as a father figure, like my old coaches. I feel like I can go to him off the field and on the field, and I feel like him coaching me, it helps me develop a lot.
The last couple of weeks of spring ball, what are the things that you really want to show this coaching staff and kind of make the statement heading into summer?
I feel like I want to show them that I'm able to play this year, but no guarantees. Just keep going no matter what. So yeah.
All right, Joe. There have been a lot of interesting storylines throughout ASU's spring practice, but of course, one of the things that we talked about off the top, Kenny Dillingham wants to see more from his younger players. So I decided, here's some 5 guys that I think are really making the most of their opportunity. Now, it didn't include transfers because I think, it should be interesting to see, some of the guys that are either returning or coming in their natural state from the high school ranks. And, start things off, I think there's 2 corners that deserve a little bit more conversation. Rodney Bimage has been absolutely one of the stars of spring practice. The redshirt freshman is absolutely not afraid to get physical, and I think right now is in the driver's seat to be that cornerback 3 position that LT Welch had for most of last year.
Yeah, and that's someone that the not a huge bar, but a decent one. I mean, Welch played well last year. Took him a bit to come on. So Bimage, if a young player to be in that spotlight, that can. I mean, it's a blessing in disguise that Welch is not with the program because he's allegedly a thief. And to have a player with more years and that could maybe be as talented, if not more, that's a win across the board for me.
And a fellow redshirt freshman there, Plas Johnson, a local guy, Chaparral product, so obviously the lineage of producing Sun Devils like Kenny Dillingham from that fine institution, it resonates here. But obviously, kind of a different corner. I mean, doesn't have necessarily the same physicality as a Rodney Bimage, but man, he is just super athletic, and some of the things that he's been able to do. It's been a couple of reps throughout spring where in coverage he's beaten off the line by the receiver's release, but is able to close the distance and in a couple cases make an interception. He's a former receiver at in the high school ranks. Hands are excellent, so I think that he's got a chance to maybe crack that rotation. But at worst, if he sticks around, he's going to be, I think, a future starter for the Devils.
Yeah, former high school receiver part is very important because I think he was primarily a receiver, or at least so early in his career. I just remember looking up information about him when he committed and seeing, over 1,000 yards receiving, and like the numbers from the receiving side of things stood out much more than anything else. I think it was a bit of a conversion to defense. So those sort of, ball skills and things like that are going to come very naturally, and just getting the X's and O's of being on that other side. But, that athleticism is undeniable.
All right, so a guy that we talked about a little bit ago, and I believe the last couple shows, that is really continuing to stick out in a very crowded room, and that's defensive end Roman Petrie. I think, coming off that injury, he looks really explosive. He looks really focused, dialed in this year. And, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just, he's chasing the quarterbacks around and making their lives miserable. He's making some hard-nosed plays against the run. And even some of the times when he's not able to get home, he's got, that one of those things that good D linemen do. You can't get to the quarterback, throw your hands up. He's had, 3-4 passes batted down at the line so far during spring. Now, again, very loaded room, and even though he is kind of now been around the college game a few years, but I think that this is a guy that by the end of the year could perhaps be getting some reps,
which is encouraging to hear because he came in last year, really not much of a factor. So you just wonder if guys come to a new school, don't really get on the field to contribute, if they just cut their losses and move on. That's kind of the stuff. For example, JP Dieter, his former teammate at Purdue, that sort of thing. So for him to stick around, in theory, again, we got to put these qualifiers on things because until that portal window opens and closes, we don't know what we don't know. But yeah, I always like to see somebody that sticks it out and works to get a higher spot.
All right, next up on this list of 5, running back Demarius Robinson. We talked about, obviously his type of video game numbers that he put up at high school when he first committed and ultimately signed. But what is really impressing most is just the physicality. And you mentioned Joe earlier, Joe, that he's not the biggest guy, but he is really embracing the physicality, doing those things that don't necessarily show up in the box score. There's one sequence on Monday that I thought really kind of illustrated this pretty well. Had a good run in an 11-on-11 session to the right, probably 8-10 yards or something. Then Ghost Rouser absolutely annihilated him. Loud hit, got both sidelines kind of riled up a little bit. Very next play is a pass dialed up, and Sam Levitt drops back. Blitzer comes off the edge. He steps up, stops that blitzer in his tracks. That gives Sam Levitt the time. Ultimately connected with Jalen Moss deep for a ball. I think that mentality is going to serve him pretty well. And with a deep running back room, I don't know that he's getting a whole lot of carries this year. But man, there might be a role for somebody like that with that mentality and that team first attitude, or maybe perhaps on special teams at worst.
Yeah, it's always a tough thing because you sometimes greedily you hate to see a guy use a year of eligibility in a role that is outside the position he plays, if that makes sense, or doing the things that his position plays. Like, for example, if he were simply brought in, to be, to pick up blitz, to be, maybe a third down type of guy, or if he's on special teams. However, those can be hugely valuable things. I mean, you look at a guy like Martell Hughes and just what making a special teams play, one single play, huge play, but just one single play, what that can do for your confidence, because it really seemed like that guy ramped it up quite a bit from that point forward with Hughes. So we'll see how this year shakes out for Robinson, because he's working, sometimes guys just give you no choice but to get him on the field. And there's a lot that a football player can do. It's not just running the ball, not just carrying the ball. he's shown that there are other things that can earn time as well.
Another standout, I think, in my eyes, has been Mekhi Stewart, the true freshman offensive lineman. Not a whole lot of true freshmen, Joe, are 6'5", 330, but man, he looks the part. He looks and plays the physicality. I also think he's got a nice agility to him, and I think there are some questions perhaps on the interior, and so perhaps I don't think he's making a run at anybody's starting job, but I think that he could be a pretty valuable piece, and depending on how things go over the summer, and maybe he gets some more time with Coach Joe, maybe he's ready to be in that rotation come fall.
Yeah, I'd say maybe the ideal situation is do the 4-game in redshirt, because unless he's just blowing the barn doors open and playing better than the upperclassmen ahead of him, that could be kind of a perfect combination there to get some experience, contribute to the team, maintain some eligibility.
All right, Joe. So before we close things out, we mentioned as of this recording, the portal is just hours away from opening up, and a couple of Sun Devils have already made their future intentions clear. And of course, ASU is not just going to be losing guys; they're going to be bringing some folks in, not in turn, not at the level or the quantity as earlier. But what position group right now do you think should perhaps be at the top of their shopping list?
So it's kind of tough to say because, realistically, I don't know that there are any starting positions up for grabs. Obviously, the ASU has to replace starters from last year, but you feel pretty confident in, what they've acquired to do so. So just kind of going through my list, a few things that come to mind. With Navi Bruzan moving on, I wouldn't hate for ASU to go get a third quarterback. I know that is not an easy sell because it certainly wouldn't be your starter, wouldn't be your number 2 with Sims still on board. But I think that there could be benefit in getting, a third quarterback in there, and that could be maybe a younger guy, a redshirt freshman or true sophomore, something like that, somebody who's got a few years. Because if you look ahead, Sims is going to be done after this year. Levitt is draft eligible, and again, as we talked about a few times, with what he did last year, you just can't rule him out as a possibility to leave for the draft. So you could have a young quarterback that comes in here and says, hey, I just kind of got to ride it out. I might have a chance to compete for a starting spot. So a lot of stars would have to line for that to be the case. And obviously you got the, high profile recruit coming in for next year's class in the transfer portal, but that could be an area. Running back, you don't think they need to do anything. Receiver, you could still make some ads there. Tight end, sounds like, you might even have a couple departures there. Encourage folks to get on Devil's Digest to read a little bit more about that. Offensive line, I think you could stand in, maybe get an offensive tackle for some depth there. So those would be the main things on offense. Defense, I think you're pretty good in the secondary at linebacker and interior line. As we know, ASU's pass rush needs to improve. I think it would be really awesome if there were just some mercenary pass rush Junior Onyeli kind of guy out there that you could just throw in. I'm not expecting them to get a starter or even a top 3 rotation guy, but just someone that can pin his ears back and get to the quarterback. That I think would be nice, unless they feel they have that developed within what they have. So by some form or fashion, the pass rush has to improve, whether that's through new personnel or existing. So the list of needs is not very long. You could fill depth spots at a lot of positions, but as far as 2 or even 3 deep, that's generally what I can think of.
Yeah, I agree. This is definitely the fine tuning aspect of the portal shop, rather than the wholesale. We need better talent. Let's bring in 40 guys from just a couple of years ago. Yeah, I right, like you said, quarterback I think is sneaking, and I think right now ASU over the next 10 days or however long this portal window runs should be really, the one concern is Jeff Sims. I think not that I think that I've heard anything that he's imminently leaving, but a team that maybe a G5 or a team that had suffered a spring ball injury could go after a guy with his extensive experience and resume, and then that would leave ASU an extremely perilous perspective there. As Kenny Dillingham said, there's always going to be if there's a amazing player that has the opportunity to be added, they're going to go do that. But I don't think that there's any needs they need to fill. I do think that the offensive tackle is probably the top of my list if there was one that they could bring in to push Atkins. Ihanachor, of course, is out for spring, and the others. A veteran presence at corner or linebacker wouldn't mind, but I think, as we talked about, they're pretty good in terms of what they have at the moment, what they're currently developing, and how things project in the future. So it's just interesting that just in a couple of cycles, how different ASU's approach is. It's nice being the champs. All right, so I think that should do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our guests, Raleek Brown, AJ Ia, and Niniva Nicholson. Spring ball is just wrapping up. We're just a couple of weeks away from another kind of dry spell, but there's always going to be great content here on the show and surrounding Sun Devil athletics. Make sure you follow the show on social media. You can follow on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, on Instagram at Speak of the Devils. Subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, and give me a follow on all things social at Denny29.
Hey, catch me, Joe Healey, 42. Big thank you to our sponsors, Cactus Sports, Jones Auto Group, Burrito Express. Get out there, get your burritos, Spaghetti Shack, and Sun Devil Family Charities.
As well as Home Field Apparel, and make sure you use offer code SUN24, SUN24 at checkout at homefieldapparel.com for 15% off your first order from the good brand. Also, be sure to give us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. Joe and I will be back next week as we recap week 4 of spring and look ahead to the home stretch.